Hello and welcome along to another episode of SPL Express. I'm Abhishek Ravikrishnan and I'm joined here by former professional player Rhysh Roshan Rai, and we're going to break down what's coming ahead in Matchweek 11 of the Singapore Premier League. But before that, let's recap what happened over the weekend. And what a weekend it was. Tampines Rovers stunned at home by Balestier Khalsa as their unbeaten run in the league came to an end. Meanwhile, Marko Krajlovic's reign as Hougang boss got off to a torrid start as the Cheetahs crashed to a final thumping by Albrecht Negata. On Sunday, Maxime Lestienne came to LTS's rescue as his brace downed Geylang International 2-1, while Brunei DPMM, they ended a 3-game winless streak after beating Tanjong Pagar 2-1. So Albrecht Negata now with a 4-point lead at the top of the table ahead of Tampines Rovers. LCS are third on 19 points. Meanwhile, Balestier Khalsa have broken into the top 4 with that huge win at OTH. They are ahead of Geylang International by 2 points. So here's what's coming up this weekend. Hougang United entertain Geylang International on Friday at the Jalan Besar Stadium. On Saturday, the Jalan Besar Stadium will be involved as well. DPMM playing hosts to Lion City Sailors. And on Sunday, that's our feature game, Tampines Rovers. They play Tanjong Pagar United at our Tampines hub. So let's look ahead to this game, starting with the Hougang versus Geylang International clash. Roshan, let's start off by talking about Hougang. Dismal season so far, and we've been trying to nitpick, or trying to find out rather, what's been wrong with the squad, or what's been wrong with the performances. Let's talk about their foreign players for now, because last season they had a good bunch of foreigners. This season we've spoken a lot about the quality they have, especially amongst the local players in the squad. But what about the foreign players? Do you think they've contributed enough this season?
I think you got to look at, yes, you obviously want to look at the foreigners specifically. You're asking me. I think let's look at them individually, okay? The two Japanese defenders, I think individually they look okay at times. It's been an issue with them where they've made some mistakes here and there, but I don't think they're afforded enough protection as a whole. That defense, I think, is left exposed a lot of the times, and it's very difficult then for that defense to sort of deal with certain situations. Those two aside, you've got Krajcek, who has been injured for quite a bit of the early start of the season already. And it's going to take a bit of time for him to really get going and get into that rhythm. Ferreira has been a real waste so far of a foreign player slot. He has not contributed anything at all to this Hougang United side. So he's been a complete waste for me. But I can see if there was a side here that had some structure, had some confidence, that you'd actually see their two foreign central defenders performing a lot better, in a much better tactical structure, in a much better tactical shape. You would see Krajcek as well getting into a run of form. Once he gets going and starts finding those goals and creating those chances, he'd be performing a lot better as well. Currently, there just seems to be a malaise going through the whole squad at the moment. They just look like they're lacking confidence. It's a situation where, if you ask me, who else needs to step up and do better? I'd say the whole squad needs to step up and do better, because I don't think anyone can really put their hands up and say, yeah, I've been doing such a great job, and it's everyone else. Hazwan might step up and say, yeah, but I've been scoring the goals. Sure, good, well done for that. But overall, it's been a bit of a nightmare for Hougang this season.
If you're Marco and you look at the squad and look at the performances so far, any bright sparks that you think, okay, that he might think, yeah, I can work with this,
It's awful at the moment, because you thought he'd get a bit of time in that break, the 2-week break that they had, to work on a few things and try and work on structure, but the confidence levels are terrible at the moment. You see the kind of goals they concede as well. A lot of them are avoidable. I would say they're all basic defensive errors that they are making. They're switching off, they're not tracking runners, they're not being hungry enough to go and try and win the ball before the opposition. And even Komatsu's goal, for example, right? It was a brilliant goal from just after the halfway mark, probably the goal of the month, maybe even the goal of the season so far. But you look at his desire to get to that ball ahead of two Hougang players. He beats Zulfami and then he beats another Hougang player, and then he takes his chance and he gets a really good goal out of it. That again is a good example of, why aren't you there? Your physicality is something you can control. Your desire to go and win the ball is something you can control. If your first touch is poor, fine, you're having an off day, you're having a bad game. But that physicality, that fight, that willingness to run and that willingness to challenge, that is something you can control, and that has to be there. And that's not something that requires confidence. Confidence, it's things like your first touch, your chance creation, scoring goals, and how comfortable you are with the ball. But if it's just about physicality and putting the hard yards in and showing that willingness to want to win the ball back, then I feel like you don't need confidence to do that. In fact, by doing that, you can sort of start to slowly build your confidence, because then you start to have an impact in games. You start to show that physicality, you start to be aggressive, and you start to grow into matches, and perhaps, hopefully, then the results will start to come along. But all of them, I think, have to look at themselves as a club as a whole. All the players have got to take on this responsibility together and step up. And that's the only way they're going to get out of this.
We'll talk about desire. Geylang International, the opponents for this week, they've shown lots of desire, and they had a pretty good performance against the Sailors. Unlucky to come away with points against the Sailors last weekend.
Without the points, I for Geylang, again, we've spoken about them before. I quite like watching them because I think they have some good ideas in how they create chances, and they're a side that do create opportunities. They just don't have that player to finish them off, as they did with Zuzul last season. And Bezakor is someone who's, I think, is fantastic. He's really dynamic. He creates opportunities for them. Yamaya is trying his best as well. He's also been scoring goals, but they don't have that consistency in terms of really putting away the opportunities. They had good chances against the Lion City Sailors, and I think that's where they are just struggling at the moment, with that focal point, with that line-leading striker. We saw Danish play up front instead of Naufal. The usual Naufal came on in the second half of that game, but they should have won that match. I think they created enough chances. They should have won that match against the Lion City Sailors. It was really the Sailors, through Lestien, that individual quality that really carried them through and found them the 3 points. But Geylang should be encouraged by most of their performances this season so far. They just need to keep going in that sense, that they need to find a way of making the most of the opportunities that they do create in matches.
You talk about a focal point attack. They have Iqbal Hussein in the team, and he's a familiar face in local football. He has played up top before. Do you think perhaps he should go up to central forward or maybe contribute more, because he's had a good start to the season?
Yeah,
so far.
it's worth a go. Sure, why not? I mean, if you don't have someone who has that position sort of made his own, then I think you're always trying to look for a different sort of formula to see where you can fit certain players in and see what comes out of it. Why not? I mean, he scored a good goal in that one, being encouraged along by Yamaya to join in the counter attack. And Iqbal's always been this player that I think people who follow Singapore football have always known of his qualities and the things that he possesses, the skills that he has in those situations. But he's never been able to show that consistency, and he's never sort of been able to be someone who I feel has taken the game seriously throughout his career and really achieved what he can achieve. But it's a good option to have. It's a good player to have in the squad. And we've obviously seen from him scoring that goal the kind of qualities that he has and the kind of qualities that he can bring to this Geylang side.
Will be an interesting game to watch. Hougang up against Geylang International. On Saturday is DPMM against Lion City Sailors. DPMM come into this game after the very important win against Tanjong Pagar, ending a 3-game winless streak. Let's talk about DPMM and the two men who've really impressed, Voronkov and Hakimi. The combination. What kind of qualities do they have, and how do they complement each other or add more value to this DPMM squad?
I think Voronkov is, obviously it's 4 years now since he won the top scorer award in the league, and a lot can change in that time. I don't think he's as dynamic as before. He's a lot older now, but he still has that presence of the centre forward. His touch is still assured. He's able to draw defenders towards him, and you can play it long into him. You can knock it down and touch it on. And then you have Hakimi, who is a vibrant, dynamic young player who loves running in behind defenders, who loves taking on defenders, running with the ball, very comfortable with it.
Is it a classic big man's moment?
You could say that. You could say that. One player who's, again, ability to hold it up, and another who's a little bit more mobile, buzzing around him. And it just seems to work really well for them. There's a good understanding between those two players, and they really are the leading lights in an attacking sense for DPMM. Hakimi, I think, has been fantastic to really watch, and it's a nice partnership that they have up front, which will be a partnership that the Sailors' defense is going to have to keep an eye out on.
Well, let's talk about Sailors and their attackers in particular. Bernie Ibini Isse, he made his first start last weekend. What have you made of him?
I think he's still sort of getting adjusted to things and the way it works in this Lion City Sailors side. There were certain glimpses of what he's able to do for them, but overall it was probably like a 6 out of 10 performance overall, which is fine. I mean, he's still early days in his career with the Lion City Sailors. But as he gets a little bit more game time, a little bit more training time with the team, you expect to see quite a bit of an improvement in his performances overall. But he's there, and I mean, it's not something that, to be fair to the Sailors, it's not something that they would have expected that they needed to do this season. Obviously they would have relied on Tanaka. Unfortunately, they got very very unlucky with that. Tanaka picking up that injury, and so they've had to bring Ebini Ise in, and hopefully for their sake, he can make a bit more of an impact up front for them.
Well, we spoke about this a little before we started recording about Sailors and how they rely on their individual quality rather than as playing as a team.
Yeah.
How do you think they should overcome this? Because clearly last week they didn't look like a team at all.
They didn't.
They look very disjointed in that game.
Yeah, they look disjointed. That's a great point that you bring up. They don't really look like a team at the moment.
Is there a system of play? Do you reckon they have a proper
I'm
system
sure they
of play?
do. I'm sure they do. They've made a lot of changes, right? And a new coach has come in. He's got his own ideas and he wants to put them across. They've had a few injury issues to deal with this season already. New players, quite a few new players coming into the side as well. Players who may have already been there but not playing too much. That's always going to be a little bit disruptive. With all these different elements that they have to deal with. And so for the moment now, I think they're relying a lot on the individual quality that they have. The likes of Lestienne, he has been outstanding. For me, the best player in the league. And he's really carrying them a lot through games, especially in an attacking sense. And then now they've got a bit of an issue with some of their players who are away at the SEA Games, for example, Noradam, Bill, and Abdul Razak. So they might be coming back soon, and that could help in terms of the under-23 quota and how Vidakovic sort of just plays around with the starting 11 in that sense, in terms of the options that he's able to put out.
Well, let's talk about our feature game for the week. That's Tampines and Tanjong Pagar United. Tampines, they suffered their first defeat of the season. In fact, it's the first time, it's their first defeat this season. What do you think is that takeaway from that game for them?
I think the takeaway would be the fact that you look at the kind of goals that they conceded. They'll be very disappointed with the way they conceded those goals. Think of Daniel Goh scoring the first. It was a mistake just in front of the penalty area, halfway between the penalty box and the halfway line, and they were sort of compressed there. Ballister Khalsa did well to sort of counter-press in that situation, force a mistake, force an error. Glenn Quay was then out of position, and Daniel Goh could pounce on that gap between Zlatkovic and Glenn Quay and pounce and put that away. Then the game becomes different. Then the game becomes a case of Tampines needing to chase it, needing to open up a little bit more. And the second goal that Ballister scored, once more, ball over the top, quick sort of transition moment. Glenn Quay is trying to clear the danger. Daniel goes right there in the press. So it's a credit to Ballister Khalsa for the work that they put in to force those errors. But again, it's mistakes that really allowed Ballister Khalsa to come away with those goals. And then the third goal that they scored, Tampines again chasing the game, leaving themselves exposed, and they get hurt on the counter attack. So the counter pressing just wasn't there. It wasn't quite switched on. I think they ran out of a few ideas in terms of creating really high quality opportunities against Ballister Khalsa. And this was always going to come at some point. I don't think anyone really expected Tampines Rovers to go all the way through the season without suffering a defeat, although you would probably think that maybe a defeat will come against some of the other title challenges, like Albirex or maybe even Lion City Sailors. But yeah, they'll be disappointed with the overall performance in that game. But I think those issues are fixable. Those gaps, those lapses, I think it's something that is a simple fix for them. And they will look to try and push on and try and get a reaction against Tanjong Pagar in this one.
Well, we mentioned there was those defensive mistakes, and it came down that left-hand side where Glenn Quay is playing. He's been converted into a left wing back. What do you make of that move? Because some can argue that it's not his best position. He struggled at certain games, and we even saw him when he played for the national team against Hong Kong during the international break. He really struggled as left back as well. So do you think that's something that should be a permanent move, or they should switch him back into attack?
Well, it's one of those things that you've got to weigh up as well as a coach. Where does he get in the attack? Is he going to be playing regularly if he's slotted in an attacking sense? He's getting a lot of minutes in this sort of hybrid left back, left wing back.
But is there a purpose if you're not playing your best games or your best position though?
I think it's a position that, as you said, it's actually put him in the island of the national coach, and it's given him an opportunity at senior international level to actually play there and show that he's an option, which helps in his career. It's another position. It's another place that he can play and get some minutes in, and that helps his development along the way as well. Is it going to be a position where he's able to show his best ability? Perhaps not. But look, I think he's still developing in his game, and it's where he's getting a lot of minutes right now, and it's something Gavin Lee has got to manage in terms of how he tries to accommodate having a player like that who's normally an attacking player playing in that role. And we've seen how he tries to accommodate Zlakovic playing on that side. I've covered this in previous shows with them trying to control the spaces over on that side of the pitch. You're never going to have a situation where there's no risk in any game. And it's down to the coach then to sort of figure out how much risk is worth it in those matches. And to be fair to them, it's worked out for the most part. You know, it's the first defeat. Yep. Otherwise, it's been pretty good for Tampines Rovers so far this season. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with it, but it is something to talk about. It is something to keep an eye out in the longer term.
Quick word about Tanjong Pagar. Previously, they've posed a lot of problems for Tampines, especially physically bullying Tampines and getting a couple of good results last season. How do you think Tanjong Pagar will approach this game, or what kind of threat will they pose?
Yeah, I think they'll look to try and be that side that's stubborn to break down. They'll use their physicality, which is what they're known for. Opportunities from set pieces, and they'll try to bully Tampines if they can in that physical department. But we've seen Tampines Rovers deal with them really well already this season. A 2-0 win earlier in the campaign, and I expect Tampines to again sort of have that blueprint of knowing how to deal with Tanjong Pagar. And it's a perfect game for the Stags to try and find a response in. They should be beating Tanjong Pagar, sides like that, if they've got ambitions to challenge for the title. But yeah, Tanjong Pagar, I mean, they're one of those teams where you kind of really don't know what to expect at times. It can be brilliant. They can find goals from out of nowhere. But otherwise, they really struggle with that consistency, and in the fact that they don't have someone like a Nishiguchi from last season who's getting them those goals on a regular basis. So that threat is gone from that Jaguar side.
So that's going to be an interesting game to watch. It's live on Sunday, and it is our match of the week. And that means Colette Wong and Shashi Kumar will be in our studio ahead of kickoff to break down the team news and build up to the action. Our coverage begins at 5:30 p.m. Don't forget to tune into the other games as well. That's live on our YouTube page. We'll be back next week for SPL Express to break down this weekend's action and also look ahead to another week of exciting football. We will see you then.